and been intelligent all their lives are going to pay the national debt. And that's what I think is going to happen.
Very good, sir. I think that's worthy of a round of applause. That's a good challenge to it. Supply and demand. We print more dollars, we've got more supply than the value goes down. Yes, sir.
I'd like to mention one of the things I've seen in my lifetime is, it was mentioned here about people not saving, and they're not saving for their retirement. Well, there's two sides to that. Number one, they take the money that they would have, that the prior generations may have saved, and they spend it. Well, that drives up capacity, and that's part of an economic, one of the economic engines is the capacity to produce. When that capacity to produce is artificially raised by spending money that should have been saved, now you have that same group of people that artificially increase the capacity by spending savings now has no retirement. So now they are a draw, and you end up with too much capacity, which causes we'll end up with stagflation, which means there's no savings to support the retirement and to support the economy, but we have too much capacity. The capacity collapses. Now all of a sudden there's no production, and there's no money to buy it if you had it, if you had production.
Okay. Thank you, sir. It's a good comment. I promise you I'm going to roll. So, who has had their hand up? Okay, sir. Thank you. My wife told me I got to come over here, so I'm coming over.
To add to the gentleman's question about overcapacity, we have to remember the free world is overcapacitated. That's our problem. Greed is our number one big problem. We let Americans, rich or corporate America, take over our government. And that's just my idea, but I think it's pretty true.
Okay. All right. Next comment. Okay, we'll try one more in the back of the room. They seem to be good folks, so we'll try it again.
Yeah, I'm not passing judgment on what I heard, but what you all said and what I've been seeing and reading and hearing and what I've seen tonight is kind of an impression that I got. And starting in end of last year and early this year, I began to feel some kind of a confusion. And then it just became like a outhouse full of flies as far as organization coming out of Washington. Can't keep track of what's next. I can't keep track of what this means or what is that. People aren't reading bills. This is all new in the sense of being so pronounced it's new. And I came up with, as I was getting confused this year and trying to figure this stuff out, recognizing, as the one gentleman said, that in the 30s when we had the Great Depression, these things were tried. And almost in the same order that they're being tried now. And about April, the thought came to me, I don't know if anybody could unknowingly lay out this pattern of action. Because it was known to fail, it failed. Morgenthau, who was the treasurer, or the Secretary of the Treasury under Roosevelt, in 1938, after the second depression, there was a second one, and unemployment never left the 15 to 20% level. He said to a group of Democrats, and that doesn't make any difference, politics to me now, party means nothing. This is more important. But he did say to those Democrats who had passed all these bills and so forth, he said, I only wanted to help people. And that's what I tried to do. But everything that we've done just has left us having spent more money, created greater debt, and accomplishing very little. And I thought that pretty well did it. And the one thing I want to just end with is that when I'm leaving this and I'm looking at it, I have one thought, and I don't know where I heard it, but I have one thought. And my thought is, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Okay. Other comments from the back wall and back here? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I think we need to be very careful who we put in office, from local all the way up to the federal government.
All right. we're gonna, in just a couple minutes, we're going to do a little summary from our own perspective here. Who are we pointing to? Oh, I'm sorry. Fran?
Yeah, I'm Fran Bradley, and I've served in the legislature, so I want to, first of all, begin kind of with an assertion. We talk about whether or not the tax cuts ought to be renewed and so forth. If you look at the rate of income, your box there, the revenue, at almost any governmental levels, you will see growth rates that exceed the CPI or anything. So it looks on the surface, I think realistically, we'd say if any of us as individuals were making the same kind of revenue increases over time that government's been having, we'd be darn happy. And we'd be thinking we ought to be able to keep up with things. I think the real problem, frankly, if you look at what, I mean, this ought to scare us to death. If you look at where the growth is, it's been the entitlement world. And it's been one after another of the entitlement world. And what scares me more than anything, I mean, I think you can easily enough to analyze any of those. What scares me more than anything is that we don't have, I think if you went out in the streets, you went through Rochester, you went through any kind of place, and you tested the level of concern of the public about this picture, you'd find blank stares. And that is scary. Because, I mean, this is closer than any, even the most avid global warming people don't have a timetable like this. This timetable is practically upon us right now. And although we certainly have, I mean, for intellectually sitting here, you'd say, oh my God. What scares me more than anything, frankly, is that the public is not as frightened. I mean, the public, and this I think is our challenge from Tea Party and everything, frankly, is how do we get our friends and neighbors concerned enough? If the public were really knowledgeable and concerned, everything would change. But we don't have that concern at this point broad enough.
Very good point. Well put, Fran, and he brings up a good point. Shifting priorities, you can take a look at that PowerPoint if you want. But let's see, you already had a chance. Let me get somebody, make sure sorry about that, I want to allow some people that haven't had a chance.
Thank you. We have one chart up here that talked about the cost of defense as compared to the GDP. And actually, that's one of the things the federal government does well and pretty efficiently. And it's one of the few things that they're really authorized to do. I think the federal government has gotten totally out of control. They've using this general welfare clause or something of the Constitution. I'm not a constitutional scholar, but they've taken on a lot of power and authority in ruling over things that founders never intended them to do. And the more they get involved, the more they spend, and the more they get their fingers in, it seems the worse things get. And so I think we need to return to the federalism that the founding fathers originally intended.
That's a good point. Go home and look at the preamble of the Constitution and look at Article 1, Section 8, and notice the words provide and promote and how they're used. Preamble, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Okay?
I'd like to answer the gentleman's question of what I'm willing to give up.
Okay. How many want to talk about what they're willing to give up? Let's be serious.
The problem is not the voter. The problem is too much apathy in this country as it is. And what I'm willing to give up, I'm willing to give up a jet to fly one member of Congress all across the United States at the same time. I'm willing to give up their ability to get into a chauffeur-driven limousine to go wherever they want in Washington. And I'm willing to give up a check to this organization. And I challenge all of you, especially you, to this organization so we can get some right people in Congress.